just women are in danger, but all marginalized people, where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out. This is Friday Java on the 7th of September 2018 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Been a very interesting week. We'll summarize some of the week on the week that was, which is tomorrow on Saturday morning. We'll talk more about the week's events. But basically, Bob Woodward's book is coming out called Fear. We talked a little bit about it. And also the anonymous op-ed in the New York Times and various administrative officials from Mad Dog Mathis to Vice President Pence have denied that they were involved or their aides. And it went down, and Politico had a long list of various cabinet functionaries, etc., all denying, including even Ben Carlson. You think Ben Carlson know anything about anything? Anyway, nonetheless, he didn't do it. So effectively, DJ Trump has to look over his shoulders. He doesn't know who did it, who doesn't, or who would have the potential to pin this type of an article. But there is obviously someone involved in it, and it's more of a defraudian type, and defraud being coming from Watergate of old, the 70s. Type of operation, but again, it's a little bit different. Will history finally find out who this person is? No doubt about that. After the end of the Trump administration, whether or not it's in 2 years or in a re-election cycle, which doesn't look, as they say, very promising at this point in time. We have the people from the University of University of Virginia at Charlottesville, and we of course remember have a hire here who was brutally killed by white supremacists in the city of Charlottesville, Virginia. The people were there demonstrating against hate and that type of behavior. In other news, while we're on hate and that type of behavior, Alex Jones has been permanently banned and his InfoWorlds from Twitter. Very interesting development there. All of these social network operations have their terms, as they say, that one has to abide by. The problem sometimes with those terms, and there was an article, I believe it was in The Guardian, about those terms and how they affect left-wing people. They can be used against left-wing people, and most likely are. Now, Alex Jones would be an outliner there in his terms. They're not normally used against the right-wingers, and you have to understand that Jones has been running amok on Twitter and other social networks for over 10 years. Unabated, he's made millions of dollars off of it. He's not one of the marginal hate swingers out there, and he was instrumental in, because of his birther activities, various other activities, in bringing about the deployables that are part of DJ Trump's coalition, and on the tragic murder in Connecticut, Newcastle, Connecticut. There are defamation suits against Alex Jones, now out of his studios in Austin, Texas. Now the situation is this the rise and fall of Alex Jones? Well, no, because Alex Jones has his own website. People can go to his websites and they can get the information, and no doubt he has vast mailing lists. So he'll be communicating with his followers via that. He's also suspended on YouTube and Facebook, but that's not a permanent banishment there. Will he return? We have no idea. The Department of Justice is investigating these so-called agreements that Facebook, Twitter, etc. have out there. And a big problem here is that in some instances these agreements butt up against the First Amendment. And at the same time, they take into account the maximum of Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, hollering or loudly enunciating, we'll clean it up a little bit, fire in a crowded cinema. Now, many of these people are doing exactly that. And this has been happening for a very, very long time. And what does Twitter do about one of their most promising Twitter operators, but displaced the Twitter king, Cory Booker? We noticed he was grandstanding in the hearing there, but no amount of grandstanding by Cory Booker, a man bought and paid for by Wall Street, will fool very many people. Period. But back to the other part of the argument there, depending on what the Department of Justice finds with these use agreements, they can be abusive, period. I know we've had problems with Facebook by just simply liking various posts of people that we interact with and doing it in rapid speed, and then there's an algorithm that slows that process down. They're not our own posts. They're posts by other people. They're that post in a regular manner. They're not any sort of strange or oddball groups out there. And we even had one situation on bostonred.org where you have to actually request an authorization code from I believe it was either the Facebook or Facebook developers, or maybe the Twitter developers, one or the other. We had the authorization code, but we were changing things over and it disappeared. We have to get back to that. These are one of the little side issue things that we have to deal with. But we'll start out in Billings, Montana. Our friend Mary there knows that area well. DJ Trump was there, and this is from the Billings Gazette. President Trump amps up criticism of Tesla. John Tesla in the second Montana rally for Rosendale. We have a little bit of that, and we included at the last of this. And I'll read a little bit of this. The president, DJ Trump, dug deeper in his attack on the Montana senior senator John Tester at a rally in Billings. That was Thursday night, the president's second trip in 2 months in advance of the midterm election. Tester's running against the Republican state audit. I never heard of him. Matt Rosendale, not a very articulate person, in a race that is drawing millions of dollars to the state and expected to be close. Trump drew more than 6,000 to Great Falls. That was enough. We covered that one also in July, rallying the party's base in support of Rosendale. Montana is one of 10 states Trump won in 2016, where Democratic senators are seeking re-election this year. DJ is expected to attend a fundraiser in the Dakotas on a Friday. So I guess he's going to the circuit here in North Dakota, another red state. That's Heidi Heitkamp running there, in front of an estimated 10,000 people at Rim Rock Auto Arena in Metro Park on Thursday. Trump horned his attacks on Tesla over the failed nomination of Admiral Ronnie Jackson, Rear Admiral Ronnie Jackson, to head the VA. Ronnie Jackson, known as Dr. Jackson, known as Candyman Jackson, giving out drugs freely. And what he claimed as a ranking member, Mr. Tester made public allegations of inappropriate behavior by Jackson. Admiral Jackson's reputation was attacked, and all those horrible things were said about him. They turned out to be lies, and they turned out to be false. Current and former co-workers said Jackson gave prescriptions without the paperwork and was intoxicated while on duty, and once drove drunk and wrecked a government vehicle. The Pentagon's Office of Inspector General opened up an investigation into Jackson's behavior, although Trump said the allegations against Jackson were false. The results are still pending. Jackson withdrew his name, and he's no longer Trump's doctor. I think he is still on the staff there. And Trump tried to paint the Tester as an obstructionist, forcing the Senate hearings this week focusing on the Judge Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. He said Tester would stand in the way of his agenda to appoint conservative judges. Tester voted against the first nominee, that was Neil Gorsuch, and he was correct about that. Tester has been unable to meet with Kavanaugh before the start of the hearings this week, and said this week he's not yet made a determination. A lot of Democrats are thinking about which direction this vote goes, and in these very tight races. In other words, if the Republicans come up with their 51 votes, and they are assured they will come up with their 51 votes, some of these people will vote with the Republicans. Rosendale spoke briefly. He did speak very briefly, this Rosendale character. He didn't have much to say. I always put Montana first, stick with President Trump to make sure we advance his agenda. We're going to confirm more justices like Neil Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, and that people will uphold the Constitution, defend your Second Amendment rights. I had to worry about the Second Amendment rights; they're taken care of. And evidently, he was spotlighting his endorsement by the National Rifle Association, and he vowed only to serve 2 terms if elected. Well, 2 terms for the Senate is 12 years. And many Republicans, including Senator Grassley of Iowa, if term limited, he'd been gone. Term limited, he would have been gone a long time ago. Period. And let's see. DJ Trump also said he would replace the NAFTA with a new brand, the U.S.-Mexican trade deal, and hopefully Canada. He had an interview with Fox and Friends. This is DJ Trump. He was critical of the anonymous opinion piece that ran Wednesday in the Times. The commentary from a senior White House official said the writer was part of the resistance within the Trump administration. Later, Trump called the identification the offer, called for the identification and said unelected deep state operation who defied the voters to push their own secret agenda or true threat to democracy itself. Tesla, who took out a full ad in newspapers across the state the day of Trump's rally in Great Falls, ran an ad on television in Billings all day. Let me get it right here. The Thursday highlighting 19 bills sponsored or co-sponsored that Trump has signed. I feel a little guilty because he didn't run the most beautiful commercial. Trump said, I heard it yesterday, and it started that he's like my best friend. Oh, well. Tesla's campaign manager, Christy Roberts, released a statement Thursday after the rally, which pointing out where Trump referred work done by Tesla. One of those included where the president fixed a Dodd-Frank, which was a banking bill co-sponsored by Tesla. Thank you, Mr. President, for once again praising the work of John Tesla has done in reducing regulations, fighting for veterans, working to hold the VA accountable. Roberts said, we urge the president to sign John's 19th bill that currently sits on his desk. While John keeps fighting for Montana, Matt Rosendale continues to look out for himself rather than stand up for Montana. So that is the appearance in Billings, Montana. We thought we'd set the tone for this broadcast here. Let me just look back. And also there, DJ Trump said the likely government shutdown, not likely before the November elections, because he figures it would hurt Republicans. But he still plans, as DJ Trump, to shut it down. He walked back on the threat that was conducted prior to the rally will be broadcast on a Friday. I guess they're talking about the Fox and Friends said it would hurt fellow Republican candidates. He campaigned heavily on the promise to build a wall that would be paid for by Mexico, which he's refused to do. He's seeking $25 billion for the project. Billions have already been spent on the project. So in other words, it's not a cheap scenario. Now, this is one thing that is of interest here in the foreign policy. DJ Trump had promised to get out of Syria. Now, evidently, this so-called resistance here has taken on the Wilsonian foreign policy that DJ Trump has agreed to an indefinite military effort and new diplomatic push in Syria. Now, this is not good news for the Syrian people. 5 months ago, he wanted to get out of Syria, bring U.S. troops home soon, has agreed to a new strategy of indefinitely extending the military effort. Although the military campaign against the Islamic State has been nearly completed, the administration has redirected its goals to include the exit of the Iranian military and proxy forces from Syria. Now, this is interfering in the domestic affairs of Syria. Much of the motivation for change, officials stems from a growing doubt of whether Russia, which Trump has could be a partner, is able or willing to reject the Iranians. Russia and Iran have been, of course, allies of President Assad. About 2,200 U.S. troops are stationed in Syria, virtually all devoted to the war against ISIS in the east. Said U.S. forces are to remain in the country to ensure the Iranian departure, which will not happen. This is Jeffer here. Said, I'm confident the president is aboard with this. I think this Jeffer, I've looked at it before, is James Jeffer, the retired senior state or Foreign Service officer. But the predecessor, Barack Obama, basically the strategy there was to defeat ISIS. So this goes on and on. Another retired general, Colonel Joel Rabin, who transferred to the State Department from the National Security Council last month to become a special envoy. So in other words, this situation is going nowhere. Papillon, let's see. First listed Iran's withdrawal from Syria as one of 12 U.S. demands of Tehran in May. The Heritage Foundation is another neocon operation. The province is the last bastion of rebel control after the 7-year civil war, during which Assad, with extensive Russian-Iranian assistance, has pounded the opposition into submission. The scorch-earth tactic at times. Now, they claimed chemical weapons. There's been no proof of that. Idlib, I guess that's how, has become crowded, holding pen for 70,000 fighters, along with about 2 million Syrian and civilians from other battle zones. Activists and aid workers are trying to assist, and the Turkish military is also there, where they have pushed back Syrian Kurds from the Turkish border. Now, is due to attend a summit in Tehran with V.I. Putin and the Iranian President Hassan Rouhani. Now, there's a final offensive being prepared. Russian warplanes this week began bombing the region. Humanitarian organizations were at an unprecedented level of civilian bloodshed. It's a slaughter. The world is going to be very angry. He's going to get very angry, Trump said Wednesday. Russia's been beefing up its naval and air forces in the region in recent weeks, and has charged the U.S. is preparing to manufacture a chemical attack to justify military intervention. It says operations are aimed at up to 14 fighters linked to Al-Qaeda. And what these fighters have done is went into these civilian areas and taken advantage of the civilian areas there. We started using language, Jeffers says, referring to previous warnings against chemical weapons. These chemical weapons have been a favorite of these administrations. Put up chemical weapons at that. As twice, this is DJ Trump, authorized U.S. air and missile attacks on the Syrian government. But the problem there is the Russian Federation is in the middle of that, and if they hit their troops, there's all kinds of problems that will arise here. And the Zionists, are also the Israelis, conducted their own airstrikes. That's what this is about. And the civilians are used as just simply pawns. That was from, incidentally, the Washington Post, A Never-Ending Cycle, book op-eds that show how some Trump aides work to curb his instincts. We won't spend a lot of time on this because basically it's a regurgitation. We will, though, get to what happened to Beto O'Rourke. Some unapproved texts went out on his... they have a texting campaign evidently there, and they invite supporters to text, and a prearranged text there, period. O'Rourke's text program took a turn when the campaign said an imposter volunteer infiltrated the system and asked voters to help ferry undocumented workers. That's a typical Republican dirty trick. And this is texting for the team management program. Beto O'Rourke there in Texas. O'Rourke's spokesman Chris Evans told the Post that the imposter sent 2 texts Wednesday. The second one said it was polling of voters about their views on socialism. This is a regular put-up scam. And before the campaign found out and cut off the person's access, he said the campaign was looking into how the program was accessed. And Mr. O'Rourke's been doing very well, drawing crowds across Texas. And some polls that show Ted Line Cruz with a narrow lead at best. The campaign used a peer-to-peer texting program called Relay, which allows a single volunteer to field conversations with hundreds of potential voters, much like an online shopper can pull up a chat window and reach a customer service agent at will. The person who sends the text is not affiliated with Relay, a spokesman for the company told the Washington Post. He referred to questions to the campaign for details as part and parcel of running any kind of large-scale volunteer effort. He said the best way for campaigns to protect against this is to have a strong system for volunteer vetting and training and ongoing monitoring. The campaign said it's taken steps to make sure no more trolls get into the system. An unofficial YouTube tutorial for volunteers on the campaign texting team suggests how Patsy managed to do this, as Patsy was the troll. According to the video, volunteers sign up to Relay. They find 500 to 800 pre-written text messages in their box waiting to be sent out. Hey, Robert, this is Emily, a volunteer for Beto for Texas. Depending on how Robert responds, with emphasis, anger, confusion, as to how the campaign got his number, the volunteers can write back with one of a dozen responses. And all the time during the conversation, a big text window with a smiling face invites the volunteer to ad-lib their own comments, interjecting a bit of personality in the otherwise prescribed campaign drive, which is what this Patsy did. We go now to the University of Virginia. Some of this information will be a bit redundant. What is a somewhat unusual development in the incumbent party is not a clear underdog in a single Senate race with 2 months to go, but there are at least a couple of cases where the incumbent party is likely behind. Republicans remain favored to remain control of the Senate. Now in Texas, they moved from likely Republican to lean Republican. That is that contest. Some of the toss-up states, I think, went over Nevada, Arizona, Missouri, Indiana, North Dakota, and Florida. Now, there are other states there, such as Texas and Tennessee, a little hard to figure out what's going on there. But we'll read some of their commentary here. And this is being very cautious. Republican majority will still be difficult for the Democrats to dislodge. This is just very simple logic here. We don't consider the incumbent party to be a clear underdog in any of the seats they currently hold at this juncture. The incumbent party is close to being a clear underdog in 2 races. This is the shakiest incumbent is Heidi Heidkamp in North Dakota. We are holding her race as a toss-up, but it could be rated as lean Republican. North Dakota is probably the most Republican state where Democrats are playing defense in the Senate this year. Richard Berg is a first-timer who unsuccessfully tried to make The jump to the Senate didn't make it there. Moving is this is Kevin Cramer, who was elected in 2012 to replace Berg. Polls showing Heidekamp leading. We have to say that we are not familiar with any poll that Heidekamp is leading, but some of them have her more or less at a draw. Nobody we spoke with seems to believe Heidekamp is personally unpopular. She's not. But it seems like one would rather be Kramer than Heidekamp at this juncture. Now in Arizona, a different situation there. You have Martha McSally on the Republican side, and of course Kristen Simmer on the Democratic side. The Republican operatives are upset with Simmer's basically free pass. Well, Simmer is a very attractive candidate and could very well win this race. And the problem is with the president nationalizing DJ Trump, the races is not going to play as well in Arizona. You look at what happened to Sheriff Joe. He came in third place. Now, Arizona is actually a slightly better Democratic target. And it's easy looking at this. In part because of Simmer's head start and because it is an open seat. Open seats are usually always easier to run against. Now, Rosen in the congressman from Nevada, 3rd. It's a 50-50 kind of state. This is in Nevada. Now, in Florida, you have the former Governor Scott and Bill Nelson. Now, the advent of the entrance of Mr. Gillum of Tallahassee into the race will help turnout for Gillum. There's no doubt about, for Scott. There's no doubt about that. In Florida. And the from the Republican gubernatorial candidate DeSantis labeling Gillum a monkey. Well, as one would say, the monkey is swinging from the trees all over the state of Florida, and we'll see how that's happening. Some preliminary polling puts Andrew Gillum up by 1 or 2 points. That's in, of course, the margin here, and it's very late. We'll be watching that. Now in Indiana and Missouri, we have Claremont Castle. I own Claremont Castle there. And Hockley, the Attorney General. They have it as a toss-up, as the NBC poll there, and depending on which way it goes. We'll be watching this very, very closely. But a lot of it will depend on, obviously, it always does, turnout in Claremont Castle's home city of St. Louis and in Kansas City. The urban areas and how much of the rural vote they can get. Now, one of the very interesting things, and we'll look at this race very closely, is how the Right to Work initiative fared. 66% of the people in Missouri voted against it. So we'll see where those pockets of voting came out of, and also how the DJ Trump runs out here. And so I wouldn't be the 20% there. I wouldn't worry too much about that. Trump's approval rates are around 53 or 54% in both states. That's our new political atlas. That's the one they're doing with Reuters. In Indiana and Missouri, the Marsh's poll, his approval rating at 48 and 45. Well, 45% is a bit underwater for Missouri. Now, 2 other people, we already covered Montana, but this is Joe Meacham. Joe Meacham is in pretty good shape. DJ Trump carried West Virginia by 42 points. That was to be expected. And 20 points in Montana. But one thing to remember, in 2016, excuse me, the totals for DJ Trump were totally different. You had many, many things going on there with the Hillary Clinton. And you had the Hillary Clinton server there, and then the machinations surrounding it, where she was cleared and then not cleared. And that, no doubt, confused the voters. And also malpractice, the first thing on part of her campaign. But at the same time, you have situations where massive amount of voter suppression were carried out. We were looking at an article today, and we'll do it on the week that was, about how Florida has been stealing votes from African Americans since slavery. And no doubt it's been moving along there. And Joe Meacham pretty much will take care of himself. Period, in West Virginia. So, unless something happens, we think Joe will hold on. Disagreement in Tennessee. There's Marsha Blackburn. She's out of Tennessee, 7th state representative, very conservative. A lot of Republicans thought she was too conservative for the state. And at the same time, you have Phil Breedens, who's a Democrat governor. They're quite popular, period. And we've not had a lot of polling out of there, out of Tennessee. And it's a toss-up. A lot of that's going to have to do with the grassroots work. And that, no doubt, that's why they were trying to sabotage Beto O'Rourke's campaign. And I don't think that will happen. They're running neck and neck, or he's running neck and neck with Ted Line Cruz. And you also have to understand that the crystal ball is more moderate. Now, we go to Bob Menendez out of Jersey. Not as inspiring as it could be. Quantipac poll so-so at 43 to 37%. The machine, though, in Jersey is fairly strong. And out of Newark and those areas, Menendez, unless something really, really happens, we'll see how that works out with him. Likely Democrat for now in New Jersey. We agree with that situation. Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin. She's able to win election not by a landslide, but win election. A lot of that will depend on, in Wisconsin is trending in the other direction from Trump, and that may be enough to take Tandy home. Debbie Stabenow in Michigan is basically in pretty good shape now. Tina Smith in Minnesota, a little bit dicey. Shed Brown, fellow Midwesterner, or in states that Trump came close to carrying. That's Minnesota came close to carrying. But Michigan being somewhat of an outliner there, malpractice by Hillary Rodham Clinton. Not only that, voter suppression. So we've talked about that before, how much it played into that. Now, in Mississippi, we have Mike Epps. If you remember, Mike Epps was one time the Secretary of Congress, one time congressman there in Mississippi. He's an African American. He's favored to finish first in the party. Now, the person that replaced Thad Cochran, who retired for health reasons, Cindy Hyde Smith. And we again have Chris McDaniel. McDaniel almost beat Thad Cochran, and Thad Cochran had to go get the African American vote to save him. But he resigned earlier this year. Health reasons there. Now in Mississippi being polarized on race, and we'll see how that would turn out there. But Republican, the European electorate make up 60%. African Americans 35%. We'll see how that turns out. Period. Now let's get to their conclusion here. Democrats to win the Senate, they need to do 2 or 3 things. Win both Republican toss-up seats in Arizona and Nevada. They could possibly do that. Now holding on to all 26 of their current seats, several of which are in Trump states. That's a little bit harder to do. Win 1 of 2 Senate seats in dark red states. That would be in Mississippi, Tennessee. Tennessee is kind of interesting there. We'll monitor it closely. Texas, they're getting closer. And Mississippi, very hard to say there in Mississippi if they can do much there. One thing we do feel confident about, barring some major changes in the national environment, we do not expect much net change in the Senate. That's the crystal ball. Now let's go to ESPN. The U.S. Open, Serena Williams, the final there, 6-6 over Stetserova. Not sure who she is. And Keys, one of the people that they thought would win, turned out to Okara, 6-6 there. And Tiger is actually on top in one. Now this is the BMW Championship through 9 holes. 6 under. There's Tiger Woods. He's 8 under. McRory is 8 under also. So forth and so on. So we'll see what the Tiger is able to do. Let's do the baseball scores now. The Padres and Reds in a Cincy game we tuned into, 6-2 Padres. The Cubbies in a 10. It beat the Nationals 6-4. Cubbies had 11 hits, 1 error. And the Nationals 11 hits also in 1 error. Mr. Pedro Stope got the win. And Cleveland and in Toronto, Cleveland 9-4. There were not very many games going on. Atlanta and the D-backs in Arizona. Atlanta pulled that out 7-6. And that is the end of the games on a Friday. A lot of teams were off. And this will end it for us. We can be found on YouTube, our Twitter feed, the Boston Red Twitter feed. You can find our programs there. And also on Facebook. We're still on SoundCloud. And we're on, of course, iHeart. You know, there's a lot of listeners over at iHeart. And on Stitcher, iHeart has over 800 stations. We're on Spreaker. People do come to Spreaker, and we encourage them to come there. And we're still over at old Blog Talk there. Blog Talk is sort of moving along. We hope to do a live talk show while Blog Talk is still there. We'll get to that next week or so. You'll be able to call in. We'll get some standard topics. We'll have backup programming just in case people don't call in as much, as things are kind of settled down here. We've taken some courses at university, so we need to get a few weeks into that routine and get our readings up to date, and then we'll be able to move to some of these. And we also have some technical things to do at bostonred.org. We've not done, and we'll get those done also. And we'll be back with the week that was. That'll be on Saturday morning. A Numbers Man program. That's our financial program where we do macroeconomics there. And talk about this economy. Some new job numbers, incidentally, will be out on a Friday. We'll talk about that, how it affects people. We're looking at doing an open source report. A primary reason there was some leftover material that we did not get in to the last open source report. That's our technical report from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, the technical side. Like Numbers Man, we partner with Cranston Analytics for those programs and in Cranston Software. For the technical part, we'll be talking more about that. One of our goals here is to get more of our technical broadcasts out there. And we also have a program that we refer you to that program, all about sports. And we've not been doing as many of those. We will get those, start doing those in some sort of, at least perhaps bi-monthly manner. There are a number of things that are coming up here. And we'll talk more about Mr. Colin Kopanek and his NACI commercial that is running and how that benefits things. There was also an article today talking about the op-ed in the Times. Would that unify Trump supporters? Well, it possibly could, but we'll be looking at polling there. Let's just take a quick look at polling today. I don't think any polling changed. We looked at it earlier. This is from Real Clear Politics. And we'll just see if anything cleared up. On the week that was, we always do. There was some out here on Thursday. This is interesting. This is from NBC Marxist, upstate New York. Breezen up by 1 over Blackburn. And this is the Tennessee governor's race. Wait a minute here. Not sure about what's going on here. Oh, okay. That was a Senate race. The governor's race is Lee versus Dean. Lee up by 13. Don't know who Dean is. And Reuters has, it's an outline. He had 46. Nothing going on there. Salsa poll has DJ Trump. That is out of Iowa. It's now Gannett Salsa poll. Used to be the Cadillac poll there. And they have DJ Trump at 43. And she's now, I guess, doing polling for Gannett. Because the Des Moines Registry is, of course, owned by Gannett. Now, a lot of changes going on there. And generic poll up by 2. This is Salsa. We've not seen her polls out for Iowa. So she's went to a number of different things working with Gannett. Okay. This is, I said Gannett. I'm sorry about that. Grinnell College released here. In Iowa, this is the inaugural Gannett College national poll shows DJ Trump there. The poll by an elite liberal college we've never heard of, Grinnell in Iowa. It was completed over Labor Day weekend by the Des Moines-based Salsa Company. I thought it was Gannett. It was not. Gannett, I'm sorry. Shows that were held today. 36% of likely voters this fall would definitely vote to re-elect Trump. So I guess we find some things here, but this is a poll of 1,002 individuals and 779 likely voters. And amongst Europeans without college degree, 55%. Among the key constituencies there, rural voters 52%, evangelicals 51%. Among suburban voters, another group that Trump carried in 2016, 49% say they would definitely vote for someone else. That's not a good sign there. And changing landscape for President Trump. This is Peter Hansen, an associate professor of political science at Grinnell College. He's not succeeded in broadening his base. 2 years is a long time, no doubt about that. And his numbers with women are on the gloomy side. Just 29% of women overall say they would definitely vote for his re-election. That is from J. Ann Salsa. His margin amongst European women is slightly higher at 36%, but as low as suburban women at only 24%. And his total approval rating, likely vote, is 43%. Then among the general population, it is 39%. Although 50% of vote groups disapprove of his job. Since he took office, 42% of likely voters say they are now more favorable, including 26% who say a lot more favorable, but the majority of 53% say they are unfavorable. Future likely voters are hopeful about the future of the nation, with 60% saying they are hopeful. I guess this is optimism is broadly based, with both Clinton and Trump voters. Likely voter attitudes toward Congress is more negative there. Supreme Court, the new Supreme Court nominee, likely midterm voters, positive feelings, 59% favorable, 24% unfavorable. And this is just basically about Grinnell College, is private liberal arts college, founded in 1846. It has only 1,700 students there from around the world who get BA degrees in disciplines, humanities, arts. Grinnell's rigorous academic program, campus life, emphasizes excellence in education, free inquiry, open exchange of ideas, a diverse community. J. Ann Salsa, Ph.D., is nationally recognized. I didn't know she had a Ph.D. Industry leader, audience research firm since 1990. Full Salsa Company has worked with a variety of clients, including healthcare organizations, financial institutions, universities, advocacy groups. She used to be the poll for the Des Moines Registry. I assume she still is the poll for the Des Moines Registry. So this is out here. I don't know anything else we can do about that. But this was released on the 5th of September. So it is the most recent release we have out of Iowa. This will do it for us. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll see you on a Saturday morning on the Week That Was.
Rosendale. Matt, come on up. Matt. Where's Matt? Come on up, Matt. Come on up, Matt. Welcome back to Montana, Mr. President. This crowd is all here for you. And what a crowd it is. Thank you for fighting for us and for always putting America first. Montana is going to right a wrong this November, and we're going to send you the conservative reinforcements that you need to continue your good work. My promise to each and every one of you is that I will always put Montana first and stick with President Trump to make sure we advance his agenda. We're going to repeal and replace Obamacare and give you options on health care that you can actually afford. We're going to protect your public lands and fight against the liberals that are trying to grab your guns. We're going to confirm more justices like Neil Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, people that will uphold the Constitution and defend your Second Amendment rights. Speaking of the Second Amendment, we have some breaking news tonight. We were informed and learned last night that the NRA has endorsed my campaign. We're going to secure our border, enforce our laws, and build that wall. We're going to keep this economy growing, your taxes low, and get government off of your back and out of your wallet. We've all seen the problems with big government. Politicians representing themselves and not us, intoxicated with privilege and power. They start worrying about the next election instead of the next generation. President Trump, I agree with you. We need term limits. That's why, if you elect me, I promise to serve no more than 2 terms. The people of Montana support term limits. They believe in doing your job and returning home, and so do I.